At Highways England, we believe in a connected country. We believe that connecting people builds communities, that connecting families with places creates memories, that connecting workers with jobs creates opportunities, and that connecting businesses helps our nation thrive. Our network makes these connections happen, 4 million a day, and we make them happen safely, reliably, because we're the ones who never sleep. The ones who strive to improve our major roads and motorways. The ones who quietly design and plan, build and run, with pride, care and experience. Because our network is vital to the running of the country. We engineer the future to keep people moving today and moving better tomorrow. We've introduced Cockneys to Cornwall and Carlisle to the continent. 4,300 miles driven smarter and smoother. City to countryside, mountain to coast, wherever the people are. What connects them is England. What connects England is us.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Highways England Regional Delivery Programme webinar. I'm Shaun McCarthy, I'm Chair of the Supply Chain School, and I'm dead excited about this. When we started the school in 2012 with 7 partners, this is exactly the sort of thing that I envisaged. You have 11 contractor partners working together with a common objective to upskill their supply chains around sustainability, with a common objective to measure their performance in sustainability in the same way with their supply chains. We have over 300 people on the call today. We have an enlightened client with a vision and a strategy and an understanding of the way forward. This is the future for the construction sector. Welcome. Okay, so some house rules. Please use the Q&A for your questions. We've got a really full agenda today, so we won't necessarily be able to answer all of your questions, but we will follow up and come back to you. If you use the Q&A rather than the chat, we can find you. Cameras and microphones will be turned off for attendees. Please share your feedback afterwards, and we will be sharing a recording of this webinar that will go up on the Supply Chain School website, be available to everybody to see after the event. We traditionally start with a safety moment for every Highways England event, so please watch this video. Thank you.
Lanes 2 and 3 have reopened on the inbound. Eastbound is flowing well there.
If you tailgate the car in front, the closer you get, the less time you'll have to react. Don't be a space invader. Stay safe. Stay back.
Thank you. So here's the agenda for today. As you'll see, we've got some amazing speakers, some experts in the industry, leaders in the industry. After the break, you're going to be hearing from members of the team that put together and will be delivering this program. We aim to finish by 1:30. So please, we'll try and keep everything to time, but we've got a very, very packed agenda for you today. Okay, so without further ado, let's move on to Ed McCann, who is Senior Vice President of ICE.
Thank you, Shaun, and hello and good morning, everybody. As Shaun says, I'm a Vice President at the ICA. I'm also a Director of Expedition Engineering, and I've been, like a lot of you, in this industry for quite a long time. And I've been kindly invited to come along this morning, or join in this morning, to talk about the zero carbon agenda that is, well, racing up in our attention at the moment. And I'm going to start by running a short video, which is sort of an intro to the current ICE President Rachel Skinner's presidential address earlier this year. And I would commend that to you to watch the whole thing. And here we have a very short excerpt.
Imagine a world where we work together towards net zero carbon, where we pull together not just around the ICE flag, but with others like us.
When you know that something is doing you harm, then there is no excuse for not doing something.
Making something your priority is what makes the difference.
Imagine if we actually pooled our knowledge and expertise in order to make real, rapid progress.
The institution of civil engineers are people who could be right at the heartbeat of the whole thing.
We understand the danger that we're in at the moment on this planet.
Engineers understand ecology.
Science does really matter.
We are the world's inventors, innovators and practical problem solvers.
So civil engineering is at the heart of everything we're doing.
We have to reinvent ourselves.
This is our ocean basin.
I think as engineers we need to start thinking outside the box.
We are at the forefront of research.
Well, everyone working on these projects wants them to be the greenest.
We are starting to pay more attention to it.
Today, the engineering profession is waking up to its responsibility.
So I hope you will agree that there's a sort of overwhelming case for this subject as a really important one and one that, well, we all need to address in the interests of our futures and our children's futures as well. And what I'm going to do in this short presentation is I'm going to take you through and structure the challenge, if you like, and share with you some observations that are coming out of projects that we in practice and with our clients and with the IC are currently working on, ending up in a sense with a sort of a series of 3 simple steps that we can all take, you can all take in your work for Highways England to help address this carbon challenge. So I'm going to end with that. The first thing is to draw your attention to the slide in front of you, and what this basically says that infrastructure is very important in the carbon challenge. And on the left hand side you can see that the total carbon footprint, about 770 million tonnes of CO2 a year. If you go down to the bottom left hand side, 13% of that, or nearly 100 million tonnes of carbon dioxide a year, is really directly controlled by the capital and operational carbon that is associated with our infrastructure, of which the road network and Highways England's work is a very significant proportion. On the right hand side, what you can see is a result of work done by Yannick Giesigkamp, which he presented in the Unwin lecture last year, which points to the fact that whereas there have been very significant improvements in the carbon performance of a number of infrastructure sectors, transport isn't one of them. And that transport continues to rise. It's taken a very slight dip in the 17 to 18 period there, but when you compare it with the gains that have been achieved in other sectors, transport is a challenge and a problem area in terms of the carbon story. And if you go down to the bottom right hand side, what you can see that again across the infrastructure section, lots of improvements have been made in operational carbon and user carbon, but capital carbon is still, and capital carbon is what we design into these roads and structures, and so that continues to rise. And so that hopefully gives you a sense that we are really important in this. We as infrastructure, we as Highways England are really important, and we as designers and constructors are really important. The Highways England have recognised this, and you've got a statement from Jim O'Sullivan there on the front page of the website, actually, or very close to the front page, that actually over the next 5 years we will reduce our carbon emissions and support government's ambitions to achieve net zero by 2050. So it couldn't be much clearer that Highways England are committed to this and deadly serious. So what do we do in response to this challenge? And I've put this sort of, perhaps it's a sort of strange thing to say, but I think it's really important that we focus on doing the right stuff, because when you're confronted with an emergency or a challenge or a sense that you've got to do something, it can be very tempting to rush out and do what you're comfortable doing. And I read this article about the Nightingale hospitals in the paper the other day, and I was really struck by the fact that we as an industry were really proud of the huge effort that people put in. In 9 days, they built 4,000 hospital beds into place in Excel, in the Excel Centre. And the industry, I think, rightly felt proud of its achievement. But the question about whether it was the right thing to do is important, because it turns out that virtually no one's been in one of these hospitals. It also turns out that notwithstanding the huge achievement of providing them, there are nothing like enough ICU nurses to do the work in them. And so we spent £530 million building facilities that simply couldn't be used. And it was done with the best of intentions, but it wasn't the right thing to do. And we knew at the time that some of these problems existed. So it's really, really important when confronted with a challenge like carbon to make sure we do the right stuff. And so what does that mean? So what I'm saying here is we've got to do the analysis properly. We've got to make sure we understand what we are faced with, and we have to make use of what we already know in doing that. We need to develop options, evaluate them properly, make timely decisions, and implement diligently. We must control the urge to just go and do stuff. We've got to make sure it's the right stuff. In terms of what is the right stuff, I'm going to talk to you about a project that we've been leading with I3P. And many of you know about I3P, I know, and I'm really pleased to see that I think it's 8 or 7 of the RDP contractors are I3P members. And I know that many of you have participated really actively in this study. So thank you very much for that. And I would encourage those of you who aren't aware of I3P to get involved because there's good stuff happening there. But the project we were working on was called the I3P Zero Carbon World Targeting Project. It was funded by Network Rail and HS2. And its purpose was to deliver the needed carbon reductions in UK infrastructure through innovation. And there's a particular innovation optic there. The project involves, and we're still doing it, so we've done part 1, but we're in part 2 now, a comprehensive whole system analysis of what's going on now in the form of this carbon innovation maturity model. So we do ask questions like, have we got all the skills and understanding? Are the attitudes right? Have we got the right materials? Have we got the right business culture and organization information and so on? Trying to make sure that we do actually understand the situation so that we can make the right choices and do the right stuff. What's emerged out of this project is a sort of understanding, and again, many of you will be familiar with marginal abatement curves, and this is a sort of marginal abatement curve. And what it says that if you move towards route zero, there are a series of things that actually you will do to reduce carbon that save money. So down on the left-hand side, making better strategic choices about whether to build or not build. Lean design and lean construction, both save carbon and cost. Error elimination, I'm going to return to that later. And using existing low carbon materials quite often saves money too, as those of you involved in cement replacements will know. As we move above that line, we start seeing technologies that cost more and are more risky. And we are going to need to get into that territory as we go after net zero projects and the net zero infrastructure. But it makes a huge amount of sense to focus on the stuff to the left-hand side of that, because that will be saving money and delivering benefits on carbon straight away. So that's come out of our study. And again, it won't be news to many of you, but I just make the point. So out of this study, one of the things we've identified is 154 live initiatives that have been reported by the wide community that's been engaged in this to deliver innovation in carbon and reduce carbon. We've subsequently found about another 30. So there is a huge amount going on, and immediately it's obvious that there's an awful amount of overlap, and some of these are bonkers and some of them are brilliant and some of them are they're in very different states. And part of what we're doing in this project is to try and organize these, coordinate these, make sure that the good ones are properly invested. And so essentially what we're doing is we're taking those opportunities, evaluating them, and then sorting them into delivery programs so that they can be delivered to good effect. And so we have these market accelerator, best practice, skills development and targeting programs. I'm not going to go into detail there. For those of you who are interested, please do get involved in the project through I3P. This is the list of the first 20 that have gone through that appraisal process and are being accelerated. And so in the dark bold or the bold text there, they're projects that have already received funding and are proceeding. And if you see in italics and slightly lighter font, these are projects where funding proposals are being developed. And you'll see at the moment there's a huge preponderance of funding in these coming from Network Rail and HS2. In part, that's because they co-funded the initial research, and I'm sure Highways England and others have got more that we will get clarity on as time goes on. But I'm in what comes now is I'm actually going to pick on a couple of these and bring them to your attention because I think they're directly relevant to what you do as part of this program. Okay, so I'm going to end with basically 3 sets of observations about what we need to do. 3 simple steps. And the first one is carbon action 1 is we need to get ourselves an education. This is an area that most of us don't understand properly. We get confused between our scope 1s and our scope 3s, and we don't know what user carb is compared to op carb, and we don't actually know what the significance of using certain sorts of replacement cements is in terms of durability, and how those sorts of technical decisions impact not just on initial carbon but whole life carbon consequences. And so there's a real challenge to us all as we confront this agenda to get ourselves a proper education on the subject, and we all need to do it. And I think that the role that the Supply Chain Sustainability School and others, including the ICE and iStructE and various other of the professional institutions, are really pushing this agenda. And I know that much of what you're going to hear about today from Supply Chain Sustainability School is really focusing your attention as a group on where to get educated and how to get educated through the program they're delivering. So Carbon Action 2, and apologies, a slight format glitch there, but we just need to stop making errors. And those of you who know me will know I've been involved in a program called the Get It Right initiative since its inception, really. And again, very pleased to see that 8 of the RDP contractors are signatories to GERI. And I know several of you were right in at the beginning, and I'm not going to name you now, but you as organizations have funded and supported a very comprehensive research and training development program specifically targeted on getting error out of construction. And I think that's very well done to you. But we are still in a situation where, as a sector, we waste in financial terms between 10 and 25% of project costs. So it's simply making mistakes that we have to rectify. And you get a similar kind of consequence, although it's probably not as big in percentage terms, associated with carbon and waste, material waste and so on, that arises from errors. We know that the huge volumes of material taken away from construction sites or thrown in the bin or replaced because of errors we don't need to make. And so there's a program going on now that there's several actually infrastructure companies looking at running zero error tiger teams to apply GERI principles to specific clients and programs. And I really think that's something that you might want to look at on the RDP program. And I know that there's some huge fans of GERI in that list of active participants. And I would encourage you to do so, because we will save carbon if we stop making errors. And this is the final one. And it comes back to the need to prioritize and to deliver. And I think it's worth just dwelling on that slide for a moment, because many of you crop up and you will be doing stuff on here. And I just wanted to pause momentarily to sort of talk about, well, what does it mean to do this stuff differently? And I would be saying to people running design teams to push them to make sure that the design is lean, make sure that the utilization of the structures in structural performance terms is high, that columns are operating under their design loads at high levels of utilization, so we haven't got loads of wasted material buried inside them. Similarly, in construction, is to think about lean construction and planning your operations very carefully using lean construction principles. These things drive energy costs down, they reduce the amount of fuel you use in the earthworks operation and so on, which you all know, but it's very important to push those agendas in terms of carbon. To the clients around the table, optimal strategic choices are really, really important. Is, you know, the decision to widen, to not widen, to go one way rather than another. That is the single biggest determinant of the total carbon impact of a program, is how you make those strategic choices. And factoring carbon into that calculation is increasingly critical. And I would encourage you to do that and build decision-making processes that are get better and better at factoring carbon into strategic choices. I've talked about error elimination. I'm just going to talk a little bit about existing low carbon materials and drawing your attention. Again, I know people on this program know a lot about alternative asphalt technologies using low embodied carbon, low temperature asphalt materials. I know there are people on this call who are actively looking at the use of alternative cement to substitute for OPC. And I'm not just talking about GGBS, I'm talking about the alkali-based solutions that are coming forward as well. Looking at procuring your steel from sources that have used electric arc furnaces rather than blast furnaces to produce low carbon steel. There's a project going on at the moment around rebar specification, looking to increase the assumed strength of rebar. So I would get involved in those things in particular and first, but not lose sight of the stuff on the right-hand side here, where we need to push the agenda on new low carbon materials, alternatives to reinforced concrete, alternatives to conventional asphalts. And we also need to look at high quality offsetting, because the reality is we don't get to net zero on infrastructure in the way we're talking about it without some type of offsetting or on-site generation or carbon capture. It's just not possible. And so when we talk about offsetting, we shouldn't avoid it. We should factor it into the decision-making process, and we should focus on providing high quality offsetting within program. So maybe this is along the roads and the routes that you're using, where you deal with offsetting by afforestation, improving biodiversity and other such measures. And so I would encourage you to think about high quality offsetting as you design and deliver the programs that you're doing. So I'm going to finish up there just with a brief summary. So the call is out, and Rachel said it very clearly. Now is the time. We need to engage with this agenda. It's been reinforced nationally by the ICE and NIC and government. It's been reinforced by Jim O'Sullivan and Highways England. There's a lot of work going on at the moment to make sure we do the right stuff, and I encourage you to engage with the likes of I3P as they try and do that, and Geary as they try and do their thing. And then those three sort of takeaways of getting an education on this subject, which we all need to do. Secondly, to stop making mistakes and engage with that. And thirdly, to really focus on the priority actions that will move us cost effectively and program effectively towards low carbon net zero outcomes. At which point I'll say thank you very much, and I hope you'll enjoy the rest of your webinar.
Okay, thank you very much, Ed. We will be supporting this programme obviously through the next 5 years of the programme of work that we're introducing today. We'll be delivering loads of training around carbon. We'll also be delivering the opportunity for those members of the supply chain to measure and manage their carbon footprints using the same software platform, using consistent measures for sustainability, so we can really start to get a handle on what we're achieving. I'm really excited about this next presentation because I'm a procurement person by background, and I really love to see good strategic procurement at work, and certainly I think Highways England are one of the exemplars of that in our sector. So over to Malcolm to run his presentation. Thank you.
So I'll start with this slide. Before I sort of talk around this, you don't see carbon mentioned on this slide because it was written about 9 months ago. But behind the scenes over the last 3 months at exec and board level in highways, we've been looking very, very closely at how do we contribute to the net zero carbon challenge. And you will see a lot more of that coming out. And we've been talking through a little bit of it at the Engagement Council and Collaboration Board that we run for people to join those events. But carbon is massive. We, as Jim said, we are absolutely clear that if we don't have a credible plan for carbon, the ability to secure RP3 funding in 5 years' time would be in question. So I'd really echo what's been said before, as well as the fact as a client, we are looking to catalyse change in the industry. And if that means that we deliberately try and catalyse different materials or trial different materials on the network to help move the agenda forward, we will, as part of the overall RP2 piece. The only other bit I'd add, in line with carbon, an area that is also coming that we're going to be actively engaged in is social value. And you will see a lot more of that, how we support the social value drive from the government as per the recent PPN. And the best example I use is Royal British Legion Industries, which is part of Royal British Legion. It's a small factory down in Kent with about 20 odd people that work in it. They're all either mentally or physically disabled ex-service men and women. And they make signs, and they sell heavily into Network Rail. And they also beginning to sell into, the Highways England supply base as well. That to me is an example of where we should give a little bit back to society and help people that have given a lot to the country. So you will see those two themes coming out as part of RP2 emerging in the next 6 months. But on this slide, you can see the scale of RP2 versus RP1. RP1, which finished in April last year, 15 billion, RP2, 27 billion. So the way I explain to people, it's an 80% uplift in revenue. And it's the biggest single investment in road building for a generation. Part of RP2 has obviously got tunnels like the A303, and you've also got the massive 2 tunnels on the Lower Thames Crossing, as well as continuing investment in roads that you've seen in RP1. When you look at the schemes in RP2, you get an indication about what is likely to come in RP3, but RP3 cannot be taken for granted. And my personal background, I've spent my working life in manufacturing, And the first 3 businesses I worked in went bust because they took the wrong bets. They didn't take the right decisions. We have to also drive change and catalyze change in this industry, because if you look at where it is versus the opportunity that we've been given to drive change, it's immense. And so I'd ask everyone on the call to really think about how you drive change, how you support change, catalyze change, etc. in the industry. And I've been quite open. I've said I don't mind if people grow their margins. I think the margins industry are low, but I think there is equally a vast amount of opportunity for individual businesses and organisations to grow those margins. And I'm sure Martin will touch on a bit of this as well later on. And I've worked in businesses where, initially margins were 2 or 3%. And then by just focusing in on the basics and using lean techniques and just using proven techniques, margins have been growing to 8, 9, 10%. And I don't have any objection if people achieve that. And if we can help catalyse that in the industry, then that's great. But it does mean that you have to go for continuous improvement, you have to go for lean, you have to go for those types of things. And part of that also, we have to learn to collaborate a lot more than we have done historically. And interestingly, what I've heard as part of C19, a lot of the supply base will say there's more collaboration in the last 12 months than there has been previously. And I think that's fantastic, but we have to do more of it, because the old adage I've come from is supply chains compete, not individual businesses. If we do all of that, then I don't see why everyone can't be successful. We really make a step change in the industry and we secure the future of RP3. The final point I'll make is, remember, and I've seen this since I've joined, I've only been in highways 2 years, a lot of people think project by project by project. And what we're trying to do as a business is move away from project by project and make sure people think about a program. So if we're investing to make change, we're not trying to get the ROI in just one project. We're making the change over the program. And that is really what RDP gives people the ability to do. So you see some themes that, again, I've talked on when I've talked to places like Highways UK or internal events. We are never, ever going to compromise on safety, customer and delivery. It's not going to happen. We are not going to compromise on that. AFR set the challenge about 9 months ago to try and halve our AFR rate. We're probably going to end the year at about 0.05 across the supply base, but we should really be aspiring to get down to 0.02, 0.03. I'd actively encourage people on the HE passport scheme, because I think that helps to streamline things, eliminate duplication, etc., etc. But what we must be doing, we finished RP1 with a reputation for delivering on time, on budget. But what we really must be striving for is being able to deliver early and under budget. As I said before, we are never going to compromise on customer safety or quality. The themes we're driving heavily within the supply base, you can see below, and I'll just draw a few out. So leadership and skills, we are looking at the Roads Academy about how do we revamp that in the sense of just make sure it's what we want for RP2 as opposed to what we needed in RP1. And one of the drivers there is how do we invest in leadership training and help tier 2s, tier 3s get the benefit of that type of activity, because the bulk of the work is delivered on the ground at tier 2, tier 3 level. And if we're going to drive productivity, catalyse change, that's where we've got to really go for it in a big way. Collaboration I've touched on, forecasting I'm going to do a slide later on, and the other slides you'll see are really around supply chain development. Strategic sourcing, we're just using category management techniques, but again, we are really going to try and understand what goes on in the different categories so we can catalyse change from a performance point of view, a technology point of view. Now that means we have to look at and adjust standards, that's fine. We will work through that as part of RP2. And I can't emphasise enough the digital piece. We have such a massive opportunity with digital technology, all the way from design to delivery on the ground. We have to invest in that. If we don't do that, we are not going to drive the productivity agenda, which in terms of hard cash means that we can't help people grow their margins to become more sustainable. So an area that Highways has been probably quite rightly criticised on in the past is we haven't been very good at forecasting. And what we've been piloting for the last 12 months is rolling out a very standard approach to forecast. It's called demand and ops planning. In some businesses, it's referred to as sales and ops planning. And the gurus in this area are really an organisation called Oliver White, if you do a sort of Google to understand what it is. But fundamentally, where we are working and what our assumptions are, if you think about design, demand, plan, source, deliver the scheme in that exchange, build, construct it, and then deliver it to the travelling public in that way, it replicates a lot of thinking that comes out of manufacturing industry. And as I said before, I spent all my working life in manufacturing. I've worked on things like heavy engineering, nuclear submarines, to FMCG, to medium volume electronics, etc. But the learnings that come from that is, and I use the speech marks just to illustrate the rule of thumbs I've learned. 70% of cost is designed in, and one of the benefits of RDP is it's encouraging people, it's encouraging the contractor and the designer communities to work together. So much of cost is designed in, so much of safety can be designed in, but I don't think we do enough of that as an industry. We don't think enough about that, design all the way through to construct, all the way through to operational maintenance for the lifetime. And we as highways haven't done enough on the demand side. So what you're going to see far more of is the delivery of that focus that will come through RDP, but also an improving level of demand at category level. And by around the mid-year point of this year, we should have most of that 4 to 5 year demand picture in place by individual category. We've already begun to share with relevant suppliers by category. The next couple of slides talk about how we are evolving our supply development approach. And these slides have been shared and worked up with our top 8 contractors who've, are in agreement, and we're going to systematically roll it out, both from a highways perspective as well as via the contractor. So you can see this emerging model that we're using. And this is based on models from other industries. It's pretty much, common sense. It's just taking the best of other industries and then applying it to where we are. But we are going to increasingly roll this out, tier 1, tier 3, and make sure that tier 2, tier 3 suppliers have access to this as well. Because as I said before, that's where the bulk of the on-the-ground work is done. And that's where the bulk of the benefits will come. And it will mature over time. Some organisations could well be at a level 2, level 3, level 4 now. Some organisations may be at more level 1, level 2. But it's about having a consistent approach to help people get to the right capability over time. If we can deliver this, the objective of delivering early and under budget, helping people become more sustainable, embedding carbon, social value, all the different things I've touched on will come as a matter of routine. A little bit more detail around it. You can see how we're approaching it from internally within the supply chain division with Simon Diggle and David O'Neill, and then how we're aiming to roll it through tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And you can see that our naming convention is highly innovative. We have the supply development system at tier 2, supply development system light, and then tier 2, tier 3 supply development system lighter. And the aim of that is that if, the bigger the organisation, the more in depth it's going to be. If you're a relatively small organisation, clearly you're not going to want to be encumbered by some of the more complex stuff. It's got to be made relevant to how you improve and deliver on the ground. But again, have a look at this. The slides will be shared and talk to relevant players afterwards. Again, we're increasingly working with the supply chain school. I think historically we have sort of on and off, but we're doing it in a far more coordinated way. And you will see program level engagements like today. A303 is going down a similar route and working out what they need specifically, and LTC has been doing it. So we really are, putting our weight in behind the supply chain school to get that consistency and to get that one approach, one unified way to make it very, very simple for everyone in the sector to use, adopt, and develop. And you can see on the top right, you're seeing the emergence of the thinking on social value, carbon, modern slavery, et cetera, et cetera. All of these are coming, and all of these you will see a lot more of over the next 6 to 12 months. So, and again, I first used this slide and modified it slightly. I first used this slide in 2019 at Highways UK. And, it's standing the test of time. End of 2025, as it says there, we must have developed the reputation for never compromising on safety, customer quality standards. We have to be able to deliver on or ahead of budgets, and we have to be able to deliver on or ahead of agreed dates. If we do that, as an industry, we have a very bright future. If we can do that as well as help people grow, develop, become better, more productive, more innovative, use new technology, bring these things in to drive continuous improvements and change, then we have a massive opportunity to secure a very good RP3 of similar scale to RP2, just by the number of schemes that are started. But it's up to all of us to do that. We as a clients have to help catalyse this, but every organisation has to play their part and be willing to get involved and drive for change and improve, etc. And at the end of it, if we do that, imagine the morale factor and the satisfaction in the industry where we're recognised as an industry that's really made a step change and gone forward. And that is what we're aiming to achieve as the client organisation within the sector. So I hope that helps. Any questions, do it via the chat. And I hope you found that useful. I hope that sets the scene for the rest of the day.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Malcolm. An inspirational presentation. Isn't it refreshing to hear a procurement director saying that he expects you to improve your margins? And procurement is no longer about simply driving margins down. It's about delivering value. We're getting some great steer in terms of how we might do that today. Now I think we're going to see a video from Danny Sullivan. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Flynn and I'm Head of Client Relations and Business Development for the Danny Sullivan Group. We're a trades and labour supplier and we've been supplying people to many highways projects such as the A14, the M3, the M4 and the M25 to name a few. We first became members of the school back in 2011 and then shortly after decided to become partners because we could see the huge benefits that the school was bringing to us as an organisation. We've participated in many workshops, training events, networking events and launch events since then. And I sit on the infrastructure board and the labour category working group. So the knowledge share and resources that the school has provided to us as a business has really been invaluable. And even just recently, we've been working with the school closely to create e-learning pathways that has enabled our workforce to access online courses and e-learning modules through our Danny Sullivan Group LMS system. This has proven to be hugely successful because now any new operatives joining the group, they can undertake their EDI and modern slavery training at the induction stage. We're very excited about the Highways England RDP and Supply Chain Sustainability School platform launch. And from my experience working across major infrastructure projects, I know that reporting has become such a key area of focus. So I think this highways platform will provide a great support to suppliers like us in terms of supply chain collaboration, supplier development and resilience as well as helping us meet and exceed our sustainability targets, as well as cost-effective and streamlined sustainability reporting. So I'm very much looking forward to the journey ahead with the RDP and the school.
Thank you. We've got a few of these videos interspersed throughout the day just to hear from people in the supply chain and to understand their perspective. Next up is Aaron Reid. Aaron's going to be talking specifically about diversity and inclusion in the construction sector, something that is being pushed very heavily by infrastructure partners such as Highways England, Network Rail, HS2, etc., and will be a key feature of our industry going forward. So, and I understand Aaron's wearing a tie. Over to you, Aaron.
Hi, Shaun. Thanks for that. Hopefully you can all see me, or maybe not, as the case may be. Yeah, my name is Aaron Reid. I'm Head of Sustainability and Sustainable Procurement at Balfour Beatty, but I suppose for the purpose of this conversation, I sit on the steering group for fairness, inclusion and respect. Always tricky, I think, to follow the keynote, especially an inspirational keynote from Malcolm as he's done there. And so I'll do my best to kind of see us through to the break as best as I can. Hopefully lockdown isn't taking too much of a toll on all of you. I'm afraid it's beginning to take a toll on me, which is why I probably need to start with a few apologies. I'm a little bit concerned. I've not been sold as advertised. You may have noticed in my profile picture I had hair. That has certainly gone out of the window during the lockdown period. Wasn't something I could hold on to anymore. My second apology is just around the homeschooling situation, which I know a lot of you are having to deal with at the moment. And my children are somewhere out there. I've barricaded the door and hopefully they won't make it through. But if any little heads do pop up in the background, I do apologise. And as Shaun said, it's the first time in 9 months I've actually been able to put a tie on. And I had to do it actually because of the background. I've suddenly realised this morning I've got the wrong colour shirt on. And if I don't put a tie on, I'll just look like a floating head. So all of my apologies out of the way. And I appreciate that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. And so I'll get on with it. I know that we've been talking about diversity and inclusion and fairness, inclusion and respect for a long time now. And it's easy to think that, all the activity that we see, we must be starting to make a bit of progress in this area. But actually, as much as we've got all this activity going on, the outcomes aren't necessarily moving. And so I wanted to talk to you today just about 3 reasons why, or focus in on at least 3 reasons why I think diversity and inclusion still matters and matters to most of us. The first one is around fairness. And that's, I think, reasonable to say that most of us want to work in a fair and inclusive environment and a place where our differences are respected. And in terms of productivity, we want to be working alongside the best of all available talent. And sometimes that talent comes in different packages and comes from different backgrounds. And we certainly all want to be rewarded proportionately for our talent and our efforts. The last thing I want to talk about today is around the skills piece. You know, we certainly need to meet the current and future skills demand, and arguably it's one of the biggest challenges we have as a sector, and we simply can't afford to discriminate anymore. We need the people. We can't afford to keep losing people as fast as we do. It's expensive for all of the activity and all of the money we spend in investing on increasing the representation of women in the sector. Women are still leaving the sector as fast as they are joining. The figure for female representation in 2017 was around 12.5%, 13%, and the figure in 2019 was 12.5% and 13%. And so as much as we think we're increasing representation and we're seeing more faces, more diverse faces, actually the data doesn't kind of bear that out. And so I suppose for all of those reasons, for me, diversity and inclusion still matters. In terms of fairness, you know, I've said we all want to work in an environment that is fair and recognise and respects our difference, but actually most of the people in our sector don't think that that's the case. Most of the people in our sector still feel that things like their age, their gender, their ethnicity, and their social economic background is limiting their potential career opportunity. And so we've still got some work to do, and that's people from all backgrounds. That's not limited to people from diverse backgrounds. That's people of all backgrounds feel that there's something about them, some of their personal or protected characteristics, which is still having limitations on their potential career progression in our sector. In terms of productivity and our ability to attract the best people into the sector, as I said, in terms of gender, we're still floating around 13% representation. This figure hasn't really moved for years. It's a massive underrepresentation from the 50% of the population that are women. In terms of ethnicity, depending on the source, it's somewhere between 4 and 7% of our sector is BAME, and they tend to be kind of represented not in the most senior levels within some of our organisations, and that's against a population of something like 15% BAME in this country, and certainly doesn't compare well with other sectors. And so, you know, we don't seem to be doing all we can do to attract in the best of all available talent. From an LGBT perspective, we've had no construction companies in the last 12 years appear in Stonewall's top 100 LGBT inclusive employers list. Again, I suppose it's, if we want to attract and retain and progress the best of all available talent, then we've certainly, again, got a lot more work to do. The skills piece, certainly a lot of pressure has been removed recently. I suppose the skills challenge, as I say, one of the biggest challenges to our sector. A lot of pressure recently removed, I suppose, because of COVID has slowed things down from a work perspective. There's been decline in commercial and aviation sectors, and there's been an increase in apprenticeships. But there's still huge demand in terms of housing and infrastructure pipeline. We've got the Brexit exit in terms of some of our European colleagues who are returning home and may or may not decide to return. We've got an ever-increasing ageing workforce with a number of people coming up to retirement. There's something of a cliff edge that we're about to face. And all of that is causing kind of wage inflation. We have to start to think about doing things differently. And arguably, diversity and inclusion is part of the solution for that. If we address the underrepresentation of women that we've discussed, if we can address the underrepresentation of BAME people and LGBT and other minority groups, then arguably there is no skills shortage. Regardless of anything else that we do, D&I has got a huge potential to support us in addressing the skills shortage. And if all that didn't convince you, then the final point is that it matters to Highways England. It really matters to Highways England. For them, this isn't a soft agenda, it's a hard targets and KPIs that flow down through their contracts and affect us all. And for them, it's very much about legacy, I think, as Malcolm alluded to. The focus that Highways England have is not just around workforce, but is around the customer experience and communities. It's around the people and places piece, and it's also around the diversity within the supply chain. And again, Malcolm gave a great example of how we can work with voluntary community and social enterprises to help not only with the D&I piece and the inclusion piece, but also to support with the social value piece as well, which I think I expand on in the next slide. Some of you might have seen, and for any kind of procurement nerds out there, I know Shaun has certainly seen this, a recent public procurement notification come out from government called PPN 0620, which is essentially around social value. And what this has done is requiring all public sector, central government bodies and extended through the public sector to adopt a more consistent approach to embedding social value into procurement, and in fact requiring a minimum of 10% weighting in all public procurement now to be allocated to social value. In actual fact, from a Balfour Beatty perspective, we're certainly seeing customers come out with anywhere between 10 and 30% of the total overall marks. And so increasingly, social value and the things contained within it are the differentiator. You know, you'll all know we typically win or lose contracts, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7%. And so suddenly to have this relatively new area have somewhere between 10 and 30% of total available marks available, it is arguably the differentiator. And so for all the other reasons around fairness, around productivity, around addressing the skills shortage, around, there's an explicit client requirement coming out of Highways England, there's an explicit requirement coming out of many, many other, certainly public sector customers as well at the moment. And it's certainly going to be one of those things that will help us all to differentiate in our work winning activity. There are explicit elements within that PPN that relate to the EDI around reducing the disability gap, around tackling workforce inequality and health and well-being, etc. And it's certainly something, and again, I won't go into the detail, but we'll certainly share the slides. And if you haven't seen it, I suggest you have a look, because if we know the questions that we're going to be asked, then we need to start to be in a position where we know what the answers are and putting things in place within our organisations. But I think, as I said at the beginning, it's less about the activity and it's more about the outcomes. We've got to do the activity, but if that activity isn't moving the dial, if female representation isn't changing, if BAME representation isn't changing, then we've got to start looking again at what are the real underlying problems that are stopping us from moving on this agenda, because certainly having a policy is no longer enough anymore. Just before I get to my last slide, I just wanted to make this point that I think most organisations now recognise the arguments for the need to act on D&I. The problem is most organisations don't know what to do. It's very difficult to know what to do, and certainly the evidence and the data shows that collectively we don't know what to do, because whatever we have been doing isn't actually making that much of a difference. We've still got the skill shortage, we've still got the underrepresentation. But there's good news, I think, and that's kind of reflected on my last slide. And I suppose, I would say this, wouldn't I? I sit on the steering group. But what we have got in support of helping people to move the dial within their own organisations and move the dial more broadly in our sector is the Fairness, Inclusion and Respect programme and the toolkit that sits underneath that. And if you haven't seen it and you haven't signed up to some of the resources, then I absolutely recommend them to you. They're put together through a collaboration with a range of different main contractor organisations and subject matter experts from in and around the sector. And there is access to free e-learning modules, toolbox talks and regular workshops that hopefully will help us all to get a better understanding of what the issues are, but also help us to get a better understanding of what we need to do to start actually moving the dial and addressing some of the challenges around diversity and inclusion. So that's all from me. I hope something in there was useful or interesting, but happily take questions later on if that's of use. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Aaron. And some really key messages in there about outcomes. Measuring activity is no longer good enough. And the challenge that we all face around diversity and inclusion is quite a profound one. As I said earlier, we're going to have a few videos from various different players in the supply chain, just really to talk about the programme and their experience in working with the supply chain school and working on this programme. So the next video is from R&C Williams.
R&C Williams are a civil engineering contractor based in central Birmingham. We are part of Highways England supply chain and we currently operate in areas 7 and 9. We understand the importance of sustainability and a sustainable future. We've recently signed up to the Birmingham Business Charter for Social Responsibility. We also continue to support a number of local charities as well as being involved in numerous community projects. I've been tasked with progressing our membership of the Supply Chain Sustainability School and rolling this out to each of our managers and key staff. We have now signed up each of our managers and they have gone through their personal assessments. This in turn has generated their individual action plans. One of the main benefits is that all of the information and e-learning is available online, meaning that it is easily accessible. This is particularly important at the current time with the coronavirus pandemic, meaning that classroom learning is unavailable. There's a huge amount of information and free learning available to each of us now that we have all signed up. The dashboard lets us see easily where we are as a company, as well as me being able to see where my own personal development is. The next two challenges for R&C Williams are: how are we going to roll this learning out to our operational staff who are actually out on site and ensure that we get their buy-in? And how are we going to make this information available to our own supply chain? These are things that we're going to be discussing over the coming weeks and how we're going to go about this. We will continue to develop our working procedures, as well as providing our employees with the necessary tools and learning so that they can continue to support our customers and the whole collaborative effort for a sustainable future.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to work with the team that have actually created this initiative. So I'm going to hand over straight away now to Andrew Spencer to introduce the team and talk about some elements of the programme. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Shaun. Thank you to all the guests and speakers so far. And you've heard from some great people and some really great ideas. And thank you to all the audience for listening in and joining us back after the break. I think most people have joined back, so that's great. Industry first, a bit of industry leading collaboration between Highways England, DIPS, supply chains. You've all heard people talking about collaboration now. We should work together. So we're proud together to come here and talk to you about the work we've been doing for RDP. A little introduction. So my name is Andrew Spencer. I'm the head of procurement and supply chain for highways within Skanska, but I'm here today as head of the task and finishing group as part of the sustainable supply chain group, with the four other wonderful people you can see on the call. I won't run through their titles, but they can introduce themselves. A couple of other minor thank yous as well at the same time. Damien Hopkins and Ben Cross have also been heavily involved, but are not joining presenting. And towards the groups, we've done a lot of work over the past few months, working with our sustainable carbon leads, many workshops, EDI, social value, and the supply chain as well. So there's been a lot of input in getting to the stage of where we are today. And also a big thank you to everybody within Supply Chain Sustainability School and so far. So Shaun, Andrew, Stefania, Charles, Paul, Ian, Laura, everybody else. What a great organisation to work with and makes us all look very professional and polished. So what a great organisation to work with. So really, really helpful. So this is pretty much what you're going to hear from us from the next 15, 20 minutes or so. A little bit about what the RDP programme is about and some of the works of what we're doing. You've heard some of the industry level ideas and visions. But also now this is specifically about the programme, what we're going to deliver across RDP. So I'll move into point one now and start going a little bit of background and context of what we're doing. So as I mentioned, RDP, Sustainable Supply Chain Group, formed 18 months ago. Thank you to Gavin Cooper within Highways England and also Chris Richardson, who were heavily involved and supported this initiative to drive some real programmatic change, which is what you've heard from Malcolm and other speakers about how we wanted to go in strategic sourcing. One of the task groups was about how we develop and improve our supply chain and work with the Supply Chain Sustainability School. I was lucky enough to start leading that group and have been working with some wonderful individuals who really share the same passion to really maximise the power of the Supply Chain Sustainability School. We have an amazing resource as an industry. We really wanted to leverage best value and the ability of the school to develop and improve, measure performance, improve together. Times are tough, but standing still is not an option really. And I noticed some of the comments in the Q&A challenging about how we should move forward and make that simpler across the programme. But thank you to the investment from all the DIPs for trusting myself and partners on the screen to really develop a programme across RDP, and we're going to talk you through it now. So I'll just explain to you briefly what the programme includes now on our next slide. So the programme overview for RDP. I say RDP, but we've also been working heavily with Highways England to try and align this programme across other sectors. So Stefan Jastak has done some fantastic work. So thank you for your help in trying us to align across smart motorways and SIP and the learning journeys, interference inclusion programme, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the main four areas what this programme is going to cover across RDP. And I'll hand over now to Sarah to start explaining the first one.
Thanks, Andrew. Morning, everyone. My name's Sarah Thomas and I'm Head of Supply Chain at Costain in the Highways. So through true collaboration, the delivery partners on RDP have pulled together a fantastic 12-month programme of activities for our supply chain. We're in a position to be able to share the full programme in advance to enable your organisations to plan and ensure you get the best out of each session. So gone are the days of attending the same courses for different tier ones, where there was always a danger of this becoming such a tick box exercise, essentially. So as delivery partners, we have aligned to bring a core set of development activities that will run across the RDP programme as a whole. By working together, we are not only achieving incredible efficiencies, we can also provide a development programme that truly aligns with Highways England and RDP key areas of focus. So you have a 12-month development opportunity that will be shared across all of the delivery partners. Just to summarise briefly what that will encompass, there'll be 11 training workshops and then 4 supplier days throughout the 12-month period. They'll be provided free of charge for all suppliers and subcontractors that are involved in delivery on our RDP schemes. The areas covered will include carbon, waste, social value, collaborative working, off-site manufacture, lean, sustainable procurement, and many more. These sessions will be facilitated by the Sustainability School and a few subject matter experts. There is going to be a strong emphasis on collaboration, sharing, learning, and innovation. And in addition to all of this, there's also access to a wealth of online resource and learning that you can benefit. I'm really looking forward to going on this journey with our suppliers and developing not only our supply chain, but us as delivery partners and us as individuals. Handing over to Caroline.
Thanks, Sarah. My name is Caroline Hinchcliffe. I'm the Supply Chain Relationship Manager for Kier Highways, and I've been involved in this group putting this together. It's been great working with all these guys, and we're all learning from each other and moving this forward, so it's been really good. I just wanted to think back to what Ed said very early on in his presentation, that most of us need to get educated on this, on the sustainability piece. And Aaron said that 7 out of 10 people don't really know what they need to do around diversity and inclusion. So if we think also about carbon, waste, water, modern slavery, we really do need to get educated. So, and I know for a lot of us, homeschooling is helping with that at the moment. What I don't know about fronted adverbials, or it's not worth knowing really. But in terms of this space, in addition to the workshop and supply days that Sarah's just mentioned, the Supply Chain School portal has got a whole host of information available. So we're encouraging all the RDP suppliers and subcontractors to make use of that free learning. All the materials and resources are online, and you can set up an individual account to enable your own learning and also progress, as we just heard from R&C Williams, progress yourselves as an organisation as well. The learning pathways have been developed with Highways England in collaboration with the Supply Chain School, and it's basically to provide an easy entry point and recommend a selection of learning topics for the supply chain that are completely aligned with Highways England's strategic priorities. There's 2 pathways available for any school user through the self-enroll function on the dashboards. Now, Core 1 is the entry-level pathway, and that's got 17 sustainability topics. So it provides a wide range of fundamental learning that's completely aligned with Highways England. They're really easy to access, and some of them are short as 5 minutes each. So no one's got an excuse. You can always find 5 minutes to develop yourself and get some learning in there. The second pathway is Core 2, which is intermediate level learning using the Supply Chain School's CPD accredited e-learning modules. And they're video-based tutorials. So they cover some more in-depth learning on a number of topics, and they average about 45 minutes. So even those are not terribly long, but they do give more detailed knowledge and understanding. So as users, learning journey is unique. We can develop it and tailor it to ourselves, and we can do it at our own pace. So nobody's telling you when you need to do it. So it's a really great opportunity for all of us as DIPs and wider supply chain to develop ourselves and our organisations and use that across the sector. So on that note, I'll hand over to Andrew Wilson.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrew Wilson from the Supply Chain Sustainability School. It's been a real pleasure to work with so many committed delivery integration partners as part of the RDP at the moment, and really looking forward to continuing the journey forwards over the next few years. Through the Regional Development Partnership, we've created a bespoke version of the Supply Chain School Sustainability Tool. This innovative reporting software solution is going to enable us to measure and improve sustainability performance, not just at scheme level, but right across the RDP framework itself. So it's a cloud-based reporting application, and it'll prevent dependence on usual Excel spreadsheets that I'm sure everybody will be glad to hear, and no more reliance on swapping around various Excels and different versions of those. We'll have one-stop shop for reporting our sustainability information. Working as one team, we'll be able to collect and analyse and both environmental and socio-economic data reported right down to scheme level. We've got smart dashboards in place that will track performance on a full range of sustainability KPIs at different levels in the RDP. So to summarize, we've got accurate performance data, which will drive transparency, collaboration, and a shared accountability for poor performance right across the supply chain. We'll have a very efficient system for requesting data, which is going to save everyone a lot of time, ultimately, and streamline reporting. And we're going to be able to capture and share and measure overall value created through the collaborative effort right across the RDP, and not just on isolated pockets of best practice at individual team level. Importantly, we're going to be providing full training over the next few weeks. Both the delivery integration partners, or DIPs, and the full supply chain, so all suppliers and subcontractors on this call and many more besides, will be receiving notification of dates for free training workshops to take part in, which will bring everyone up to speed with the detail of how to use the tool. And we'll be communicating those dates from Monday onwards. Within the tool, we've got a full range of metrics across 8 separate issues regarding sustainability. So those 8 issues very quickly are carbon, air quality, water, environmental management, employment, community, waste, and sustainable procurement. So across all of those 8 issues, we'll have many, many metrics. Importantly, not all suppliers and subcontractors will be responsible for filling in each and every piece of data across all of those metrics. Many suppliers and subcontractors will be encouraged to focus on the specific risk areas that are most pertinent and relevant to them. Very quickly, I thought it'd be interesting to show you a little bit of structure without getting into too much detail. You'll see there on the screen a kind of top-level corporate dashboard will be created for measuring sustainability performance, as I've said, right across the RDP framework. And ultimately, it's hoped that Highways England will be able to work with us to use a similar approach to other frameworks that are underway, such as smart motorways and Lower Thames Crossing. Scheme dashboard level, in the middle of the screen there, we'll be able to accept data feeds into the dashboards at scheme levels, and then we will have a series of reporting packages for individual suppliers to contribute to. Taking the general view and putting that into more of the Highways England RDP supply chain structure, we'll see there that the corporate dashboards very much at the top there in terms of RDP overall performance. We've got the sub-regions that can report on as well. And then we'll have DIPs who are able to support on their particular schemes. So Andrew, who's spoken just before me there, and Sarah as well. So Andrew from Skanska will be really interested, for example, in measuring performance on the N42 Junction 6 project, which is underway. Similarly, Sarah from Costain, one of her projects will be A1 Scotswood to North Brunton. So they will be able to report at that micro level, if you like, for those particular schemes. But that information will be fed up to broader dashboards. The first quarter for the tool is actually now underway, but don't worry, as I've said, full training will be provided, and the reporting deadline will not be until mid-April. So we've got plenty of time to work through the training and bring all suppliers and contractors fully up to speed with the detail of using the tool well before that reporting deadline. So look out for further information following this launch. I'd now like to pass across to Emma Murnahan from Graham to take you through how we're measuring impact.
Thanks, Andrew, and good afternoon, everyone. As Andrew said, my name is Emma Murnahan and I'm Head of Responsible Sustainable Business at Graham. And I feel personally privileged to be part of this team. You've heard from Andrew from Skanska, our task group leader, about the ambitions that we have for this initiative. Collaborative approach that is unique, not just to the RDP, but to the industry. And there's no rocket science in it at all. You then heard from Sarah from Costain about the programme of events and training that we've selected and that are tailor-made to suit our client requirements, which comply with current legislation, which reflect current best practice, and which enable us to fulfil our contractual requirements. Sarah passed the baton on to Caroline from Kier, who gave us a snapshot of how to access the huge resources available and free to each and every one of us at the Supply Chain Sustainability School. How our personal learning journey is unique to us, provides us the opportunity to learn and mature at our own pace. Yet each part of our upskilling and development becomes part of the collective learning journey of the entire supply chain involved in Highways England RDP. Andrew from Supply Chain School then showed us an overview of how the system works. This is clever. And once we each get set up and trained on the system, it's easy to use, accessible anytime, any place, anywhere. And the wonders of the digital revolution also means that the data gets measured and managed effortlessly. And so the baton gets passed to me to explain what happens to all this data, why it matters, and why we should all get involved. Some facts first. This is unique, this is innovative, and we're all invited to be part of the Highways Supply Chain School. Over the next 5 years, because we're that ambitious, the Highways Supply Chain School has committed to delivering over 10,000 training interventions, which equates to 37,000 hours of CPD accredited training, 20 bespoke supplier days and 55 training workshops. For the foreseeable future, these will all be delivered virtually, but that saves travel time, fuel and carbon, which we've heard a lot about today. They're all easily accessible and, as we keep stressing, free. This will help us improve our supply chain engagement, improve our sustainability skills, and ultimately improve our performance. The programme aligns with our client needs and drives confidence in the competency of the supply chain. The school also offers additional support and targeted intervention where required. So don't panic if you feel that this is all above your head. The Highway Supply Chain School will report in a standard way which drives transparency and help us track the success of the approach, initially across the Regional Development Programme. But the model has potential to be enhanced, improved, repeatable and scaled up right across the sector, indeed the industry. So this is a national programme approach to supply chain development and support. So what happens to all this data? If we each play our part, if we engage with this journey of personal development and upskilling, and if we adopt this knowledge into our working practices and behaviours, we will be more confident and competent in our management of carbon and waste. We will protect the planet, and over the long term, we will save money. We will be more confident and competent in our avoidance of fraud and modern slavery. We will be ethical, responsible, and remain legally compliant. We will better understand that business improvement and innovation is enhanced and accelerated when our workforce is diverse and inclusive. Then we truly become not just collaborative, but inclusive, innovative, responsible, and sustainable. And who wouldn't want that? So why bother? Every time one of us logs in and completes some of the resources at the Highways Supply Chain School, we're actually helping to deliver better highways. Continuous improvement is our collective responsibility. This is our contribution to optimising the highway sector. It's good for us as individuals, it's better for our businesses, it's excellent for the Regional Development Programme, and it's innovative for our sector. Delivering better infrastructure drives a thriving economy, protects the environment, and positively impacts the lives of people and communities we serve. So finally, our call to action to you today is please play your part. Join us and help us deliver more sustainable infrastructure. Thanks for listening, and I believe I hand back to Shaun.
Okay, thanks very much, Emma. So you've heard a little from the team that have developed and will be delivering this programme over the next 5 years. We have another video now, I think, from Aggregate Industries.
Hi, my name is Emily Dillow from Aggregate Industries. Aggregate Industries is one of the strategic pavement supply chain partners for Highways England and its delivery integration partners on the RDP programme. We support the delivery of pavement contracts nationally throughout the UK for Highways England, local authorities and also for private clients. We're a gold founding member of the Supply Chain Sustainability School, and we are able to use the school's functions to both upskill our people on important topics such as environment, sustainability, quality, innovation and growth, but we also provide topical e-learning packages to our supply chain partners as well. So we have a number of sustainability ambassadors who are dotted around the UK, as well as qualified individuals, technical specialists and that sort of thing, who are able to attend supply chain school webinars and also provide continuous professional development to the supply chain and support their sustainable growth. It's important for us as one of the UK's largest pavement contractors and material suppliers that we collaborate and share our knowledge and expertise with the supply chain, our partners and our peers to create sustainability amongst the supply chain. It's equally important that any supply chain goals or developments or innovations that support us, Highways England and its supply chain in meeting the UK sustainability targets, that they are shared operationally with those working on construction and infrastructure projects on the ground to support their sustainable development as well. By sharing that tacit knowledge, that knowledge of topics that you're keeping to yourselves, by sharing that knowledge and working together as one team to meet joint goals and objectives, we're making a conscious effort to collaborate, develop trust and share our resources and support one another. This will lead to achieving efficiencies and securing a sustainable future for all of us. Thanks very much.
Okay, so next up, I'd like to introduce Martin Perks. During the preparation for this event, Martin and I discovered that we were both at the launch of the Latham report to the construction industry. And then I think we were both quite shocked to realise that it was 25 years ago. Martin's going to zoom out a little bit and take a more strategic view of the industry and the way forward. Over to you, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaun. And good morning, everybody. So I am having a bit of a look at this and hope to take you through in the next 10 to 15 minutes, a bit of a sort of zoom out and look at why we've moved down the path and the direction of travel we have. And really, it's starting to tie together all those things that we've already been talking about this morning, and to refocus that Highways England is moving down a direction of travel to create an outcome that is predictable and dependable. And that doesn't preclude innovation, because innovation can be introduced into projects and into designs and into ways of working and into psychologically safe teams and integrated teams at the right pace at the right time. What we're trying to do is move away from surprise activity that happens too close to the work face, it happens too close to the activation of activity. So the whole purpose of RDP is to in a more accomplished way, involve and all of the supply community in an integrated project team to be able to think these things through, to take out the waste, to get it right first time, to act in equal and diverse and inclusive ways so that people can bring their best self to work. So I thought I'd just sort of start a bit further back from the sort of detail that we've been talking about and take you back to the construction sector deal. And today, the construction sector deal is about transforming the construction programs. It's about creating this construction innovation hub and transforming the network, giving green construction. And they're all of the things that we've been talking about today. The Construction Leadership Council took the industrial strategy that contains the construction deal and looked at what its response was going to be. We're part of that, and you are all part of that. The response started to look at how we set targets and we set ambitious transformation goals. So looking at a 33% reduction in whole life costs means starting to think about the whole asset life, not just the constructability, not just about the immediate performance, but also to look at the way that the asset will be performing in 20, 30, 50 years' time. And merging these two things together, the governmental aspiration for a deal and the industrial strategy and the Leadership Council's response is a really interesting dynamic. It's where we currently are and the reason that we've moved to RDP as a model against which we can do this. So some of the other responses are about reducing project time. 50% reduction in project time is ambitious. If you go and have a look at, if you haven't been involved in the water sector started to set ambitious targets like this. Anglian have set a 50% reduction in site time. They've achieved and surpassed that by setting stretch targets. People tend to have to rethink about the way that they were doing things before. And that also relates to this carbon emissions target that has been set. So as Malcolm said, Highways England carbon is emerging. We've been thinking about it for a long time. We've been putting together a response over the last year. It forms part of our development strategy, our sustainable development strategy. And a 50% reduction in carbon emissions includes everything. So we've set ourselves a target to be way past that and into net zero carbon for our own operation by 2030. And we're looking at whole supply chain into our enhancement M&R works by 2035. And that's in line with meeting the government's targets for 2050. And one of the other things that an RDP is built to facilitate all of that. It's one of the first parts of the procured contract modelling and delivery modelling and commercial strategies that enables that to happen together with the supply chain, creating incentives, creating pathways to trade in a different way. And the last thing on this list is a reduction in trade gap from built assets. Now, the wording's a little bit interesting there. For us, that means if we're doing work in the Northwest, then more of the trade capability that we require in the Northwest comes from the Northwest. And so regional delivery partnerships is built specifically around that ambition of achieving more in-region procurement and delivery. So how are we as a sector of the market rising to meet this challenge? So there will be innovative things, and specifically looking at the Construction Leadership Council's response. They listed 3 specific things: digital techniques, off-site manufacturing technologies, and whole life asset performance. In Highways England, we are working under RDP and under SMA to bring those to life. So in digital techniques, we've got real-time control using digital by default. That's a transformation work stream that Major Projects is leading on. Smart Motorways has been in the vanguard of using digital site technology from a digital twin. So we're really focused on being able to digitalize as many things as we can. We're just about to start an initiative to look at a digital QS. And one of the things we have an aspiration to do, and don't know how long it's going to take, is to automate payment processes so that at the point of delivery, receipt approval triggers payment. It may take some time to get to that. So we may need to go through self-assessment before we move to it. We don't know yet. But if we can move to a point where work done on a site triggers payment rather than going through the myriad of human interventions that go from the receipt of a ticket on site through to money in the delivery party's bank account through a project bank account, if we can automate that process, we will save huge amounts of time, improve cash flows, transform the way that the commerce works within this sector. So managing safety through predictability, digital techniques and BIM models and real-time Internet of Things running on sites is largely geared to be able to practice what we're doing, run clash detection, run safety protocols before we get people into hazardous situations. And we're very, very focused on not only creating the environment to do that, but and one of the responses I've done to the Q&A is to start looking at measuring those things. So instead of measuring AFR We're looking at how we can move to lost time incidents, and in the future move to the leading indicators so that we're measuring observational stuff that prevents lost time incidents in the first place. So we are hugely moving in a direction of prevention rather than observation of incidents. Off-site manufacture, everybody on the call will be aware of that. We are running a transformation initiative in major projects that relates to cost-led design. That entire genre is being pushed by Smart Motorway Alliance to do as much cost-led design and off-site manufacture as possible. That will translate into component pre-design under RDP in the Regional Investment Programme. And reapplying innovation. We are fantastic at reinventing the wheel, and we're really trying to put in place a load of stuff that stops that happening. And whole life asset performance. So innovating for efficiency, less renewal of consumables, looking at much greater life expectancy, and also looking at much more effective ways of maintaining without disrupting traffic flows. And all of the things that we've been trying to do under RDP are based around the value to our road user. And those value-based outcomes are the main driver to the way that we've structured what we're doing. So the intent is we aren't building this for the sake of building it. We're building it because it's got a value to the UK economy. It's got a value to the societal involvement that it's in, and it's also got value to the community. So all of those things are not possible without people. And so as we've been talking about earlier, they're all about the things that create successful environments. So trust and respect, and everybody will have been involved in the behavioural maturity framework activity and measurement. So we're very focused on the people within the middle of this whole jigsaw puzzle. And my last slide is just to give everybody a confirmation that this is following a direction of travel from Project 13 through the IPA's route map, the construction playbook, which has just been issued, through the construction innovation hub and the value toolkit that's just out on the market for clients to understand their value and how they do what they're doing. Target value delivery, if you don't know about that, go and have a look at it. It's actually the premise upon which RDP is made. And then actually what we're doing is bringing all those things which are theoretical best practice into an actual delivery model. So I hope that gives you a bit of a sort of high level down to where we actually are and why we're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. A big picture within the construction industry, and lots of joined up initiatives that we need to bring together, as he said, in practical solutions. We have one more video.
WJ are a specialist road marking business dedicated to sustainably delivering exceptional products and services. Based on collaborative working, people, client and supplier relationships are our strength, but this independence must now include our climate, ecosystems and communities. WJ have been members of the Supply Chain Sustainability School since its inception and hold gold member status. The school helped us to better understand and grasp sustainability, contextualise and create policies and practices to deliver change. It provides a safe place for this to happen, where organisations can develop and measure progress without judgment. Understanding measurement is key. Our operational footprint is verified to the Carbon Trust standard. Embodied carbon independently verified to ISO 14067 and PAS 2050. We report to the National TOM standard for social value. We're also strong advocates of fairness, inclusion and respect in construction, introduced to us through the school. As a part of the wider national business community, we measure our progress towards meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals through BITC's Responsible Business Tracker. Highways are amongst our oldest of social networks, oiling the wheels of society and delivering social value. As an industry, we work through the pandemic, supporting and supported by Highways England. As we start to regenerate post-pandemic, we must build back better, mitigate climate change and deliver real social value to ensure a sustainable future for all.
Thank you. You would have heard earlier in the session people mentioning and talking about social value and the importance of that to Highways England and to the UK public sector generally. I'm a great fan of Daniel Fujiwara's work, and I'm very pleased to introduce Daniel to give you a perspective on social value, what it means and how to measure it. Daniel, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Daniel Fujiwara, CEO at Symmetrica Jacobs, and I'm a lecturer and visiting fellow at the London School of Economics. Our specialist area is in the measurement of social value, and I'm here to talk to you today around how infrastructure projects, including transport, can create social value and how what are the tools out there and methods that are out there to measure it. So in a recent paper that we did for the RICS, we set out some of the key ways in which large infrastructure projects can generate social value, and this is both through the supply chain but also during the the operational phase of the project as well, once the amenity or the asset has been built. These are just some examples, but there are health impacts, there's impacts on the local environment, we can have potential impacts around crime, there's congestion reduction impacts, and this would lead on to things like journey time savings, but also potentially reductions in injuries and fatalities. Through improved connectivity, we see greater social relationships, and we can give better access to better jobs for people, and also to training, so skills and knowledge, and also employment. And we can think about how we redistribute the economic opportunity and that type of thing. There are also a whole host of environmental impacts as well, which we would include in wider social value. So this could be impacts on biodiversity and air quality, for example, noise and energy usage. So a lot of the work that we do, both for public and private sector, is really trying to extend the analysis so that we can pick up these wider impacts. And there is some best practice out there now in terms of how to do that. So, in terms of the UK, the Green Book is really the key reference point. That is now effectively the manual on social value measurement in the UK. It proposes a method known as social cost benefit analysis. That method effectively monetizes or values all of the benefits and the costs to all stakeholders in society. And it's a really extensive approach. It goes beyond just things like the creation of jobs or economic multipliers and those types of financial indicators, to really trying to pick up the indicators I just showed you on the previous slide. So a reduction in crime, how does that impact on people's quality of life, and what value does that have for society? And we would include that in the Green Book type of methodology. So we really want to try and get to this kind of area where we're looking at all of the social costs and benefits, and then we can assess whether a particular program or an option in a program generates more benefits for society than costs. And there are lots of other best practice manuals out there now. We've been involved in actually the production of and co-authoring a lot of these guidelines, including the Green Book, but they all really replicate what the Green Book is saying around cost benefit analysis. So we have this real kind of global convergence, I would say, around what is best practice in this area, and how we apply it. So it's a very short presentation, but I'll quickly touch on how we could look at this in the supply chain element, and then also look at the operational phase of infrastructure projects. So we have a tool, a system known as the Social Value Bank, and it's effectively a tool that contains a matrix of values for different outcomes related to supply chain. And it actually fits very nicely with Action's sustainability tool, because their tool is effectively monitoring the different outcomes, and our Social Value Bank can then apply values to the different outcomes that are monitored through the supply chain. So we take that best practice guidance in the OECD and the Treasury Green Book, and we have a wide range of outcomes in there that against each of them we have valued using these methodologies. So we pick up kind of broadly the employment space, and then a series of indicators in environment, community engagement, and procurement. So as you input data into this tool around the types of outcomes that you've achieved and what the project is, etc., it will give you really a real-time assessment of social value. And we look at the impacts on individuals. So that's the impacts on individuals' quality of life. A job has a value to an individual in terms of improved quality of life, as an example. There are government benefits then as well. So with the example of a job, there are tax benefits, tax increases, for example, reductions in unemployment benefits. Those are all benefits for government. And then there are productivity gains for businesses as well. And a lot of the outcomes impact on all three of those stakeholders. So, health would be another area that does so. And the tool will aggregate all of those, and it's showing here for this particular example project, a highways project, it's around 78 million pounds of social value being generated. And it will give you kind of a bit of a snapshot of, the different, I guess, infographics that you can have around this and how you can filter down the different types of impacts where the social value is being predominantly driven, etc. So this type of tool allows you to really look within your supply chain at all of the different things that the supply chain is generating. A lot of that value will tend to come through things like training opportunities, work placement and employment, but there may be other areas as well, such as health and safety at work and environmental impacts. And this is able to capture those values so you can report on that through your supply chain in real time. The other area is within the operational phase, and we do a lot of work for the likes of Highways England and DFT at the moment, but also a number of other government departments, both here in the UK, but more broadly internationally as well. And this is really just trying to understand the impacts, the wider societal impacts that our infrastructure projects have. And the A303 at Stonehenge is probably our most famous study to date. It was the Highways England PCF Stage 1 assessment of the removal of the A303. And typically, business cases had looked at the economic benefits of removing that road. We were commissioned to look at the wider social and distributional impacts. So we ran surveys with visitors at Stonehenge, road users, and people living in the local area, and also the UK general population. And what we wanted to try and understand better was things like the value of preserving the stones and the heritage asset by removing the road and allowing people and visitors to access the whole World Heritage Site rather than just the bit that's been segmented by the road. Also, the improvements in visual amenity, noise reduction around the road, and also distributional impacts as well. So we looked at these wider social impacts through this study, and using the Green Book methodology allows you to effectively value these things in a way that allows you to add them to the economic impacts. So the economic impacts, the more traditional impacts of things like journey time savings were worth about £800 million. Our study found that the social impacts were worth close to 1.3 billion in addition to that. This is over the full life force of the policy, as it were. And that can be compared back to the scheme costs. These figures are slightly old now. We made some further adjustments, so they've been slightly modified over time. But broadly speaking, we found that the BCR, or the benefit cost ratio, which is for every pound that you invest in this project, how many pounds you're delivering of social value, flipped from 0.6 if we only look at the economic benefits to around 1.6 if we look at the full assessment. So we're talking about around 2.1 billion pounds of social value altogether if you add the economic with the wider societal, and you compare that back to the 1.265 billion for the development of the tunnel, and that gives you a 1.6. So we found that for every pound that we would invest as taxpayers into this scheme, it generates around 1.6 pounds of social value. So this has a material impact on the business case. It moved the business case from a poor value for money score of under 1 to what the DFT rates as medium value for money. We've done a lot more projects like this for highways and kind of road transport since then. And you would have seen last year that this particular case now gone through and had the approval from the Secretary of State. So we're excited about what the implications of that are for future road appraisals as well. The final example I'll give you is infrastructure in a slightly different area, but it's a good demonstration of how these methods can be applied. So this was looking at a particularly tricky piece of infrastructure, similar to the A303, because the construction phase was going to be delivered on a World Heritage Site. So the building of Everton FC's new proposed stadium, smack bang in the middle of the World Heritage Site in Liverpool on the waterfront there. So there's obviously the issue around potential loss of heritage compared to the benefits to the city of having this state-of-the-art stadium. So here we really extended the analysis, going beyond, again, just kind of the impact on jobs and local multipliers, to really look at wider aspects like community cohesion, pride in the city, job creation, and also aesthetic beauty, and potentially the use of the public realm there on non-match days as well for local residents. So a wide range of wider societal benefits of this stadium. And we estimated that it would deliver about £220 million of social value, in addition to around £1 billion of economic benefits over the next 30 years. And in the same way with the A303, this evidence is currently being used in the planning inquiry for the club. So that's another example of how, infrastructure, once it's been built during the operational phase, how that can deliver social value. And this is, of course, in addition to any social value created during the construction phase through the supply chain. So it's really essential to understand both sides of that coin when we're looking at social value of transport and large infrastructure schemes. And I'll hand back to Shaun now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniel. So we're coming to the end of our session now. You've heard a really compelling case, both from the Institution of Civil Engineers and from Highways England, for sustainability in the round. We've talked about carbon, we've talked about social value, we've talked about equalities and diversity. You've heard from the team that are delivering this programme of work over the next 5 years. I said at the beginning of the session I was really excited. I remain really excited about this because I think this is the future for the industry. I would encourage all of you to get involved. We will be contacting you in the near future to talk about training for the performance tool, and you'll see a programme of events going across across the next 5 years, but certainly a programme of events in the next year to start to understand how you can learn more, how we can all help to deliver on Highways England's ambitions and objectives. You will see a link in the chat for the feedback. We do rely on your feedback today. There's been over 450 people on the call today at Peak, which is one of our most successful events. Please do take a little bit of time to give us some feedback. We can always learn how to do things better. So I'd like to thank all of the speakers, certainly thank the team that have put this programme of work together. Have a lovely rest of your day and have a great weekend. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.